Congressman Barr, just a reference to the NSA and the privacy when it comes to citizens today in the United States. Go ahead, Congressman.
Privacy is one of the foundations of a free society. You probably remember Ayn Rand, the great philosopher and writer of Fountain Head and Atlas Shrugged, and she said very accurately that if the government is allowed to take away man's privacy, they gain the ability to control him absolutely. Their framers understood that. Therefore, they wove into the explicit language of the Constitution a guarantee of their privacy, and it's called the Fourth Amendment. The government cannot invade a person's privacy unless they have a good, articulable, and articulated reason for doing so. Reasonable suspicion or probable cause for a warrant. Yet what we see nowadays, and this has particularly been pronounced since 9/11, although it was starting before that, we see this notion on the part of the government, the NSA, for example, in the forefront of this, that in order to protect the nation, that is whatever our bureaucrats think is protecting the nation, they can invade our privacy and gather all manner of information on us, which of course is very easy with digital technology. So we see the NSA spending billions of dollars now building a huge complex out in Utah and they do now have the capability to gather information on virtually every electronic communication that we make. I mean, the technology has gone that far. And yet there are virtually no limitations or real legal impediments to what they're doing. We have to get a handle on that if we're to maintain any semblance of privacy in our nation.
Do you think anything was really done, obviously we've seen in the news over the last couple of months, when it comes to our privacy and what the NSA was tracking and metadata and all these different types of things, do you think that every U.S. citizen out there today is being tracked?
I think at some point the answer to that is absolutely. Because what we see is an ability of the government to not only monitor every financial transaction in which people are engaged. That means every use of a credit card. They have the capability to monitor every phone call, particularly those from cell devices, since those are all digital. They have the ability to monitor every internet email communication. So the answer to your question is, and some people may think it's an exaggeration, yes, the government does have, through all of these and other mechanisms as well, we just scratch the surface here, the ability to monitor virtually everybody in this country in one manner or another electronically.
One last question that I had, and I know this is a shorter segment, but I did want to ask a question just in reference to taxes. You know, when it comes to our tax system today, obviously there's been a lot of conversation and some legislation that's been introduced when it comes to the fair tax by former Congressman John Linder, what have you. Is there hope for our future when it comes to what we're seeing in D.C. right now with the federal spending limit continue to be raised when it comes to our taxes and what's going to happen there? When you're $16 trillion in debt, don't you think that there are those in Washington that really want to raise our tax rate?
Oh, there absolutely are. We saw, for example, with the Paul Ryan budget proposal that came out just the other day, proposing some, important but very modest cuts of $5.1 trillion over 10 years. Very, very modest when you look at the fact that the federal spending is pressing $5 trillion a year. And all of the Democrats could do up there was just whine about it. Oh, these cuts are so deep, they're going to hurt them. We will never satisfy them. But the hope is that we can get enough Republicans and a handful of conservative Democrats, and there are a few left up there, not many, that's for sure, who understand the need for meaningful long-term tax reform. And we can do it, but it's going to have to start from the grassroots up, not from Washington down. And if we demand meaningful tax reform, flat tax, fair tax, simple tax, which is my favorite of the three, and demand it of our public officials over and over and over again, and we sustain that pressure over several years, yes, we can get there.
Well, obviously, I think that's a path that you'll take if you were elected. You're going to go up there, and is it a matter that you're going to focus on trying to change the tax system, or are you going to try? You tell me what you're going to do. What are your intentions if you were elected? if you were elected, what will be your first, in your first 100 days, besides committee assignments and some of those things, when it comes to issues, what are you going to focus on there?
A couple of things, I think, and they all go to sort of the heart and soul of what we're talking about here, to shrink the size, the scope, the cost, and the power of the federal government. There are several regulatory mandates, such as the Dodd-Frank Act and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, that are already making the prior tremendous regulatory burden on our small businesses much, much worse. I'll serve again on the Financial Services and Judiciary Committees, which are the key committees to start tackling and reducing those regulatory burdens. So that's very, very important. In terms of tax reform, as you were talking about, even without serving on the Ways and Means Committee, there is a lot that I, as a member of Congress, can do. One, I'll do what I did before, and that is to sign on to the legislation that would, in fact, such as the fair tax, dramatically change, reduce, reform, and make our tax system more fair and much more efficient. And I would be an advocate, as I was before, to get out in the community to remind people how important it is for the people to lead on this. Washington is not going to lead on tax reform. The people have to demand it, and I will, in fact, be out there, right there with them.
And last, in talking to voters in the 11th district, what would you say to them direct in the eyes right now? What would you say to every voter in the 11th district of why they should vote for you?
People in the 11th district should vote for Bob Barr, because Bob Barr alone among the candidates for this very, very important office has the actual track record in the congressional arena to get the job done. Bob Barr has fought on behalf of the American people and the people of Georgia when I served in the Congress to balance the budget, cut taxes, protect our Second Amendment rights, reform welfare. I've done it before. It's even more important now than it was back in 1994 when I was first elected. That is what we need to be doing. We cannot afford, Anthony, to have novices at this critical point in our nation's history.
We want to thank former Congressman Bob Barr for being on Citizen Georgia Live today. Check us out at citizengeorgia.com. And if you're out and about in the Atlanta area today, swing on by downtown Kennesaw to the big Shanty Festival, our party for this local area, and check out some of the vendors that are all around here in downtown Kennesaw.